Anthropologists study taboo, things everybody knows, but no one is supposed to talk about. In British society, you can say almost anything you like about sex. Economics, however, is riddled with taboo. There are basic economic principles that everybody knows, but no one is ever allowed to talk about. Today I want to talk about one. Let's call it the Peter-Paul principle. The less the government is in debt, the more everybody else is. The mathematics are simple. Imagine 40 poker chips. Peter has half, Paul has the rest. Obviously, if Peter gets 10 more, then Paul has 10 less. Now look at this. It's a diagram of the balance between public and private sectors. Notice how the top is an exact mirror of the bottom. This is what's called an accounting identity. One goes up, the other must necessarily go down. What this means is that if the government declares, we must act responsibly and pay back the national debt, and runs a budget surplus, then it, the public sector, is taking in more money in taxes out of the private sector than it's paying back in. That extra money has to come from somewhere. So if the government goes into surplus, the private sector goes into deficit. If the government reduces its debt, everyone else has to go into debt in exactly that proportion in order to balance their own budgets. The chips are redistributed. This isn't a theory, it's simple math. Now, you might be asking, why does anybody have to be in debt? Why can't everybody, governments, people, businesses, just live within their means? Well, because then there wouldn't be any money. This is another thing everybody knows, but no one really wants to talk about. Money is debt. Banknotes are just a bunch of circulating IOUs. Don't believe me? Look at any banknote in your pocket. It says, I promise to pay the bearer the sum of £5. See? It's an IOU. Pounds are either circulating government debt, or they're created by banks by making loans. That's where money actually comes from. You might say, okay, that doesn't mean I'm going to end up in debt, just the improvident. But in the real world, how debt is distributed has very little to do with fiscal responsibility. It's mainly about power. The wealthy have a million ways to wriggle out of debt. The debt always gets passed off on those least able to pay. So, when the government runs a deficit, creditors, rich people again, end up holding a lot of government bonds, which pay quite low rates of interest. The government taxes you to pay it off.
All of us have to pay our share.
All that's really happening when it runs a surplus is that same government takes that same debt and effectively transfers it directly to you as higher mortgage debt, payday loans, and so on, at much higher rates of interest. Yet somehow taxes never seem to go down. Everyone really knows this. It's just a taboo to say it, because what it really means is if the government balances its books, it makes it almost impossible for you to balance yours.